Retirement was supposed to mean peace, but one day she had to act not as an ordinary American woman, but as a true hero. Captain Sarah Mitchell pressed her face against the airplane window, watching Seattle disappear beneath gray clouds. After 18 months of retirement, she'd finally accepted her brother's invitation to visit. A week of normalcy, he'd promised. Coffee shops, Pike Place Market, pretending the last 15 years in the Army never happened. The flight attendant offered her coffee. Sarah accepted, noting the slight tremor in her own hand as she reached for the cup. The tremor was new, started 3 weeks ago. Stress, her VA doctor said. Perfectly normal for someone adjusting to civilian life. And Sarah knew better. The tremor started the day she saw the news report about the missing soldiers in Syria, and 3 names she recognized. 3 soldiers who'd served under her in Afghanistan now vanished during what the Pentagon called a routine advisory mission. She closed her eyes, trying to push away memories of Kandahar province, of Operation Ghost Strike, of the mission that officially never happened, and the 7 soldiers who officially never died. Her phone vibrated. Airplane mode should have prevented that. Sarah glanced at the screen and her blood froze. "We know you're coming. The ghosts of Kandahar are waiting." No sender. No number. Impossible on a commercial flight at 30,000 feet. Sarah deleted the message, looked around the cabin. Business travelers, families, flight attendants going about their routine. Normal. Safe. Everything she'd wanted retirement to be. But retirement was a luxury she apparently couldn't afford. Sarah unbuckled her seatbelt and made her way to the bathroom. Inside, she locked the door and examined her phone more carefully. The message was gone, not just deleted, but no trace it ever existed. Even the deletion history was clean. She splashed water on her face, studying her reflection. 38 years old, but the eyes looking back seemed older. Afghanistan had aged her in ways that had nothing to do with time. Any knock on the door. "Ma'am, everything okay?" "Fine," Sarah called back. Just a moment. She returned to her seat to find a manila envelope on it, her name written on the front in familiar handwriting. Handwriting that belonged to someone who'd been dead for 5 years. Sarah's hands trembled more noticeably as she opened it. Inside, a single photograph. 7 soldiers in full combat gear, Afghan mountains in the background. Operation Ghost Strike Team. Her team. But the photo had been altered. 4 faces were crossed out in red, the 3 missing in Syria, plus 1 more. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, who'd supposedly died in a training accident last year. A note on the back, "You were supposed to protect them." Seat 23C has information you need. Sarah looked across the aisle. Seat 23C was empty, had been empty since takeoff, but now a small device sat on the cushion, a military encrypted thumb drive. And excuse me. Sarah called to a passing flight attendant. "Did you see who was sitting there?" The attendant frowned. "No one, ma'am. That seat's been empty all flight." Sarah palmed the thumb drive, mind racing. Someone on this plane had placed it there. Someone who knew about Ghost Strike, who had access to classified photos, who could send impossible messages to her phone. She needed to think. The bathroom again. Too suspicious. Instead, she reclined her seat, pretended to sleep while analyzing every passenger in view. The businessman in 22A typing aggressively on his laptop. The young mother in 24B juggling twin toddlers. The elderly man in 25C reading a Tom Clancy novel. Any of them could be watching her, or none of them. NN. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Seattle-Tacoma International Airport in 20 minutes. Sarah had 20 minutes to decide. Ignore this obvious trap and potentially let her soldiers die, or engage with an unknown enemy who clearly had resources and reach. She thought of Rodriguez. Bright, funny, fearless Maria who'd saved her life twice in Kandahar. The official report said training accident, but Maria was too good to die in training. Just like the 3 in Syria were too good to simply vanish. The plane touched down. Sarah waited until most passengers had deplaned, then made her choice. Instead of heading to baggage claim where her brother would be waiting, she ducked into an airport bathroom and locked herself in a stall. An NTHE thumb drive was military grade, would only work on specific systems. But Sarah had kept her old laptop, the one with classified partitions she'd never quite gotten around to wiping clean. She booted it up, hesitated one last moment, then inserted the drive. The screen filled with classified documents. Mission reports, satellite imagery, communication intercepts, all related to Operation Ghost Strike and its aftermath. But these weren't the sanitized versions she'd signed off on. These were raw, unredacted, revealing truths that made her stomach turn. Ghost Strike hadn't been a failed intelligence operation. It had been a cover-up. The 7 soldiers who died hadn't been killed by enemy forces. They'd discovered something they weren't supposed to know. Something about illegal weapons shipments, off-the-books funding, and a conspiracy that went up the chain of command. And now, 5 years later, someone was cleaning house. The 3 missing soldiers in Syria, Rodriguez's accident. They'd all been part of Ghost Strike's support team, all potential witnesses to what really happened that night. And a new file opened automatically. Current intelligence photos. The 3 missing soldiers, alive but captive in what looked like a warehouse. Location tag, Seattle. They weren't in Syria. They'd never been in Syria. Someone had grabbed them and brought them here, to her. Then text appeared on screen. Building 47, Port of Seattle. Midnight. Come alone or they die like the others. You have 6 hours. Sarah's hands were steady now. The tremor gone, replaced by the cold clarity that came with purpose. Someone was hunting her soldiers, using them as bait to draw her out. They'd studied her, knew she wouldn't abandon her people. They were right. They also made a mistake. They'd threatened her soldiers. And Captain Sarah Mitchell had spent 15 years learning how to deal with threats, and the screen filled with classified documents. Mission reports, satellite imagery, communication intercepts, and all related to Operation Ghost Strike and its aftermath. But these weren't the sanitized versions she'd signed off on. These were raw, unredacted, revealing truths that made her stomach turn. Ghost Strike hadn't been a failed intelligence operation. It had been a cover-up. The 7 soldiers who died hadn't been killed by enemy forces. They'd discovered something they weren't supposed to know. Something about illegal weapons shipments, off-the-books funding, and a conspiracy that went up the chain of command. And now, 5 years later, someone was cleaning house. The 3 missing soldiers in Syria, Rodriguez's accident. They'd all been part of Ghost Strike's support team, all potential witnesses to what really happened that night. And a new file opened automatically. Current intelligence photos. The 3 missing soldiers, alive but captive in what looked like a warehouse. Location tag, Seattle. They weren't in Syria. They'd never been in Syria. Someone had grabbed them and brought them here, to her. Text appeared on screen. Building 47, Port of Seattle. Midnight. Come alone or they die like the others. You have 6 hours. Sarah's hands were steady now. The tremor gone, replaced by the cold clarity that came with purpose. Someone was hunting her soldiers, using them as bait to draw her out. They'd studied her, knew she wouldn't abandon her people. They were right. But they'd also made a mistake. They'd threatened her soldiers. And Captain Sarah Mitchell had spent 15 years learning how to deal with threats. And Sarah destroyed the thumb drive and left the airport through a service exit. Her brother would be worried, but she couldn't involve him. This was military business, the kind that got civilians killed. She needed resources, weapons, surveillance equipment, backup she could trust. In Afghanistan, she'd have had a full team. Here, she was alone in a city she didn't know, facing an enemy with unlimited reach. And no, not alone. Sarah pulled out her phone, scrolled through contacts she hadn't used since retirement, found the one she needed, Master Sergeant James Cooper, retired, living in Tacoma. They'd served together through 3 deployments before he'd lost his right arm to an IED. Cooper. He answered on the second ring. It's Mitchell. I need you in silence. Then, when and where? No questions. No hesitation. That was Cooper, loyal to the end. And Tacoma, fast as you can. And Coop? Bring party favors. Roger, that party favors. Their old code for weapons and tactical gear. Cooper ran a security company now, all legal, but Sarah knew he kept equipment for emergencies. She rented a car using cash and a fake ID she'd kept for reasons she'd never fully admitted to herself. Old habits die hard, and paranoia had kept her alive more than once. North. The drive to Tacoma gave her time to think. Who was behind this? Someone with access to classified files, resources to kidnap active-duty soldiers, and a 5-year grudge related to Ghost Strike. Her phone rang, unknown number. NN. Checking in already? Sarah answered. NN. Captain Mitchell. The voice was electronic, disguised. I'm disappointed. You were supposed to come alone. They were watching. Of course they were watching. NN. Change of plans, Sarah said. You want to play games? Let's play. But I set the rules now. You're not in a position to... Sarah hung up. Let them sweat. Let them wonder what she was planning. In Cooper's place was a converted warehouse on the industrial side of Tacoma. Sarah pulled in to find him waiting, along with 2 others she recognized, Diane Chen, former Air Force pararescue, and Marcus N. Williams, ex-Navy SEAL. Heard you might need help. Chen said simply. This isn't your fight, Sarah protested. Captain, Williams interrupted, with respect. Shut up. Cooper briefed us. Someone's hunting soldiers. That makes it our fight. Sarah felt a tightness in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. These people, who owed her nothing, were ready to risk everything because soldiers were in danger. Gear up, she said. I'll brief you on the move. Then Cooper's equipment room was impressive. Body armor, night vision, communications gear, and enough firepower to outfit a small team. All legal, all registered, but assembled. It looked like they were preparing for war, which, Sarah supposed, they were. She briefed them on Ghost Strike, the cover-up, the current situation. Watched their faces harden as they understood the implications. So someone in our own command structure killed 7 soldiers, and now they're tying up loose ends. Chen summarized. That's the working theory. And we're walking into their trap because they have 3 of mine, Sarah said simply. And because sometimes the only way out of a trap is through it. Cooper checked his weapon, modified for one-handed operation. Just like old times, Captain. Except now we're fighting our own. Maybe, Sarah said. Or maybe we're fighting someone who was never really ours to begin with. And they reached the port of Seattle at 2,300 hours. Building 47 was an abandoned warehouse at the far end of the complex, isolated and dark. Perfect for an ambush, Sarah's team set up surveillance from a container stack with good sightlines. Through night vision, she counted 6 guards, all carrying military-grade weapons. Professional positioning, overlapping fields of fire. North. These aren't street thugs, Williams observed. No, Sarah agreed. These are operators. Question is, are they ours or someone else's? Her phone buzzed. Early arrival, Captain. Eager to die? Sarah typed back. Eager to end this. Release my soldiers and we can talk. You're not in a position to negotiate. Neither are you, Sarah replied. Check your 6. She watched through her scope as the guards suddenly became alert, spinning to check their rear. In Psychology 101, make them think they're surrounded, even when you're outnumbered. In. Cute, came the response, but games won't save your soldiers. Building 47. Now, alone. Sarah looked at her team. They'd set up overlapping coverage, could provide support if needed. But this was still walking into the unknown. And then, I go in, she decided. You're my insurance. If I'm not out in 30 minutes, we come get you, Cooper finished. Hard and fast. Negative. If I'm not out in 30, you call this number. She handed Chen a card. Tell them everything. Ghost Strike, the cover-up, all of it. Who's the number? Chen asked. And someone who owes me a favor. Someone with enough juice to make noise if we disappear. Sarah geared up, leaving the rifle, but keeping her sidearm and knife. Body armor under her jacket, comm unit in her ear. Not much against 6 operators, but better than nothing. The walk across the open ground to Building 47 felt like the longest of her life. Every instinct screamed danger, but she kept moving. Somewhere inside, 3 soldiers were counting on her in. The door was open. Invitation or arrogance, she wasn't sure which. The warehouse was dark, illuminated only by industrial emergency lighting that cast everything in harsh reds. Sarah moved carefully, weapon low but ready. "Far enough, Captain." Lights blazed on, temporarily blinding her. When her vision cleared, she saw them. 3 soldiers kneeling in the center of the warehouse, hands zip-tied, mouths gagged. Alive, but bruised. And standing behind them. "And Colonel Harrison?" Sarah breathed. Her former commander smiled coldly. "Captain Mitchell, though I suppose it's just Ms. Mitchell now. How's retirement treating you?" "Better than treason's treating you, apparently." Harrison's smile faltered. "Treason? I prefer to think of it as pragmatism. Do you know how much money flows through black operations, Sarah? How easy it is to redirect funds when everyone's focused on the official war. So you sold out. Got soldiers killed for money. Got soldiers killed because they couldn't follow simple orders," Harrison corrected. "Ghost Strike was supposed to be a milk run. Escort a shipment. Don't ask questions. Collect hazard pay. But your 7 had to be heroes. Had to investigate. And you killed them for it. I didn't pull the trigger. The buyers did that when your people tried to intercept the shipment. Weapons meant for Syrian rebels, diverted to private buyers. Everybody wins, except the Boy Scouts who thought duty meant something." Sarah's finger found her trigger guard. "And now you're cleaning up witnesses. Insurance," Harrison said. These 3 were getting curious, asking questions about their friends who died. And Rodriguez was actively investigating. "Couldn't have that. So you murdered her. Accidents happen. Training can be dangerous." Harrison gestured to the kneeling soldiers. These 3 were harder. Had to be creative. Fake mission to Syria. Grab them in transit. "But I knew they'd bring you out of hiding." "Why?" Sarah asked. "Why not just let it go? It's been 5 years. Because you know the truth. You wrote the real report, even if you buried it. And now there's congressional oversight, investigations into missing funds, trails that lead back to Ghost Strike, to me." Harrison pulled his own weapon. "So everyone who knows the truth has to go, starting with these 3. Then you. Then anyone else who might talk." Sarah raised her hands slowly, weapon pointing at the ceiling. "You're right. I know the truth. I have evidence. But it's not here. Kill us, and it goes public automatically." "Bluffing," Harrison said, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Am I? You think I survived 15 years in combat zones by being stupid? The real Ghost Strike files, the financial records you thought you destroyed, the communication intercepts proving you ordered 7 soldiers into an ambush, it's all backed up. Dead man's switch. I don't check in every 48 hours. It goes to every major news outlet and the DOD Inspector General. You're lying." "Maybe," Sarah said, "but can you risk it? Kill us, and by tomorrow morning, your face is on every news channel, your offshore accounts frozen, your buyers exposed. Is that worth it?" Harrison's weapon wavered. Behind him, Sarah saw movement in the shadows. Her team, moving into position despite her orders. Cooper's voice whispered in her earpiece. "Say the word, Captain." But Sarah had a better idea. "Here's my offer, Colonel. Release my soldiers, all of them, then disappear. Take your blood money and run. I'll give you 24 hours before I activate the dead man's switch. You expect me to trust you, and I expect you to be smart. You've already lost. Question is whether you lose everything or just your career." Harrison considered, and Sarah saw the moment he decided to kill them anyway. His weapon started to rise. 3 things happened simultaneously, and Sarah dove left, drawing and firing in one smooth motion. And Cooper's sniper shot took out the warehouse lights, and one of the kneeling soldiers, Sergeant Kim, Sarah realized, swept Harrison's legs despite her bound hands, and chaos erupted. Muzzle flashes in the darkness. Shouts. Breaking glass as Sarah's team breached from multiple entry points. Sarah low-crawled to the prisoners, cutting their bonds with her knife. "Stay down." Harrison's men were good, but they were outnumbered now and fighting in the dark against operators who'd spent years perfecting night combat. The firefight was brief, violent, and decisive. Inan. When the emergency lights flickered back on, Harrison was on the ground, clutching a shoulder wound. His men were down, disarmed, secured by Sarah's team. "It's over," Sarah told him. "You think this ends with me?" Harrison laughed bitterly. "I'm just middle management. The people I work for will find someone else," Sarah finished. "But not today. And not my soldiers." The aftermath was messier than the fight. Sarah's mystery contact turned out to be a JAG officer who'd suspected Harrison for years, but lacked evidence. The thumb drive on the plane, the impossible messages, all part of an elaborate sting operation to draw Harrison out. "We needed him to make a move," Colonel Patricia Wells explained later after Harrison and his network were in custody. "You were the bait, Captain. I apologize for that, but we knew he'd surface if he thought you were a threat." Sarah sat in a secure facility, still processing. "You used my soldiers as bait, too." "They volunteered," Wells said. "Once we explained the situation, they insisted on helping. Said you'd do the same for them." "Of course they did." Sarah felt pride and frustration in equal measure. "The plane? The messages?" "Technical specialists. We've been watching Harrison for months, waiting for him to activate his cleanup operation. When he started moving against Ghost Strike survivors, we knew it was time." "Rodriguez?" Wells's face darkened. "We were too late there. I'm sorry. We didn't expect him to move so quickly." Another soldier lost to greed and corruption. Sarah closed her eyes, seeing Maria's face. Bright, brave, gone. "What happens now?" she asked. "Harrison flips or faces life in military prison. His network gets rolled up. The Ghost Strike files get properly investigated. The families get the truth about how their soldiers died. And the 3 we rescued? Full recovery expected. They're asking to see you, actually." Sarah stood. "Then let's not keep them waiting." The medical wing was bright, sterile, so different from the warehouse. Sergeants Kim, Thompson, and Davies were in adjacent beds, bandaged but alert. They straightened when Sarah entered, trying to salute despite IVs and restraints. "NN at ease," Sarah said automatically, then caught herself. "Sorry. Old habits." "No apology needed, Captain," Kim said. "You came for us, just like you always said you would." "I left the Army," Sarah reminded them. "Left you all." "You left the uniform," Thompson corrected. "Never left us. We heard what you did. Risked everything to get us out. Would have done it for anyone. But you did it for us," Davies said quietly. "That matters, ma'am. That matters a lot." And Sarah spent the next hours with them, catching up, ensuring they were truly okay. But her mind kept drifting to Harrison's words. "I'm just middle management." If that was true, then Ghost Strike was part of something larger. A network of corruption that used soldiers as pawns, that turned military operations into profit centers. And if they'd tried to silence Ghost Strike survivors, who else were they targeting? Her phone rang. "Cooper in?" "Captain, you need to see the news." Sarah found a television in the waiting area. Every channel was covering the same story. Military corruption scandal. High-ranking officers arrested in connection with soldier deaths. But it was the scrolling ticker that caught her attention. Pentagon announces full investigation into black operations funding. Multiple units under review. "They're going scorched earth," Cooper said, appearing beside her. "Cleaning house before more Harrisons get exposed." "We're covering their tracks," Sarah said. "How many other Ghost Strikes are out there? How many soldiers died because they stumbled onto something they shouldn't have? Does it matter? Harrison's done. Your soldiers are safe. For now," Sarah said. But she was thinking of all the units deployed worldwide, all the opportunities for corruption, when oversight was minimal and money flowed freely. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, but she recognized the area code. Pentagon. "Captain Mitchell? This is General David Morrison, Inspector General's office. I understand you were instrumental in exposing Colonel Harrison. I was just protecting my soldiers, sir. Nevertheless, your actions have opened our eyes to a significant problem. I'm forming a task force to investigate similar corruptions across all branches. I need someone with field experience, someone who understands how these operations really work." He paused. "I need you, Captain." Sarah almost laughed. "Sir, I'm retired. Medical discharge. I'm done with the Army. The Army isn't done with you." This would be civilian oversight, working with DoD, but not under military command. Full autonomy to investigate where the evidence leads. And if it leads to more generals, more colonels, then they fall, Morrison said simply. "We've lost too many good soldiers to corruption. Help me ensure we don't lose more." Sarah stood on the balcony of her Seattle hotel room, looking out at the city lights. 3 days had passed since the warehouse. Harrison was in custody, singing like a bird to reduce his sentence. His network was crumbling, arrests happening daily. But Morrison was right. This was bigger than one corrupt colonel. The task force he described would need someone who understood both the official and unofficial sides of military operations. Someone who'd been in the dirt, who knew how easy it was for good operations to go bad. Her phone rang. Her brother, finally. "Sarah? Where the hell have you been? I've been worried sick." "I'm sorry, David. Something came up. Old Army business." "You're retired?" "Yeah, about that." Sarah took a breath. "I might be taking a job." In D.C. in silence. Then, is it dangerous? Sarah thought about Harrison, about the network that spawned him, about all the soldiers still at risk. "In Probabline? And you're going to do it anyway." "Probabline?" David sighed. "Just like when we were kids. You always had to be the hero." "Not a hero," Sarah said. "Just someone who knows where the bodies are buried. And someone who thinks they deserve justice." "When do you leave?" "Haven't decided if I'm going yet." But they both knew that was a lie. The moment Morrison called, the moment she'd learned other soldiers were at risk, the decision was made. Sarah Mitchell might have left the Army, but she'd never stopped being a protector. "Be careful," David said finally. "And this time, actually visit when you're done saving the world." "I promise," Sarah said, meaning it. "Just one more mission." But she knew better. There was always one more mission. One more soldier to save. One more wrong to right. That's what made her who she was. Not the uniform or the rank, but the inability to walk away when people needed help. The next morning, Sarah met with Morrison's team in a nondescript office building in downtown Seattle. The task force was small. 6 investigators, all former military, all with spotless records and reasons to hate corruption. "NN, welcome to Task Force Integrity," Morrison said. "Our mandate is simple. Find and eliminate corruption in military operations, particularly those involving soldier casualties." "Captain Mitchell, you'll be our field lead." "Just Mitchell now," Sarah corrected. "I'm a civilian, remember? Ms. Mitchell, then." "Your first assignment is already on your desk. 3 soldiers killed in a training accident at Fort Bragg last month. Except their unit was scheduled for deployment to a sensitive area in Africa. And now that deployment's been canceled." Sarah scanned the file. On the surface, a tragic accident, but the patterns were familiar. Soldiers asking questions, sudden accident, operation shut down, and ghost strike all over again, she muttered. "And that's what we're afraid of." Someone learned from Harrison's playbook. Or maybe Harrison learned from theirs. Sarah looked around the room at her new team. Chen and Williams had volunteered to join, bringing their skills to the task force. Cooper was consulting, his security company providing technical support. Even the 3 soldiers they'd rescued, Kim, Thompson, and Davies, had requested assignment to the unit once they recovered. "When do we start?" Sarah asked. "You started the moment you saved those soldiers in Seattle," Morrison said. "This just makes it official." Over the following weeks, Sarah threw herself into the work. Fort Bragg revealed another corruption ring, this one selling weapons to cartels. A suspicious helicopter crash in Germany exposed officers skimming from reconstruction funds. Each investigation led to more questions, more connections, a web of corruption that seemed to touch every corner of the military, but they were making progress. Arrests, convictions, policies changed. Soldiers who'd been afraid to speak up found their voice, knowing someone would listen. "You know they hate you," Cooper mentioned one evening reviewing surveillance footage. "The brass. You're disrupting decades of business as usual." "Good," Sarah said. "Maybe hatred will keep them honest, or make you a target." Sarah shrugged. She'd been a target before. At least now she was fighting for something that mattered. Not abstract concepts of democracy or freedom, but the actual lives of soldiers who deserved better than being pawns in someone's profit scheme. 6 months into the task force's operation, Sarah received a package at her D.C. apartment. No return address, but she recognized the handwriting. Rodriguez's inside, a letter dated a week before her death. "Captain, if you're reading this, then my investigation got me killed." I know that sounds dramatic, but after Ghost Strike, we both know dramatic happens. I've been tracking financial irregularities in military contracts. It goes deeper than Harrison. There's a whole network, been operating for years. They call themselves the Board, like they're running a corporation, not betraying their country. I've hidden evidence in our old spot. You remember where you made me do push-ups for mouthing off that first week in Kandahar? If something happens to me, find it. Finish what I started. Watch your six, Captain. These people have reach. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in the Afghan dust, memories flooding back. The mountains looked the same, the air tasted the same, dry and ancient and unforgiving. But she was different, older, wiser, carrying scars both visible and hidden. The cache was exactly where she remembered, hidden among rocks that looked like 1,000 others unless you knew the markers. Inside, wrapped in waterproof containers, Rodriguez had left her legacy, in financial records, communication intercepts, names and dates, and connections that painted a picture of systemic corruption going back 20 years. The Board wasn't metaphorical. 9 individuals, 4 generals, 2 defense contractors, 3 CIA officials who turned military operations into a business. Ghost Strike was just one small piece. Hundreds of operations, thousands of lives, billions of dollars. But Rodriguez had found their weakness, a shared account in Cyprus, traceable to each member. Proof that couldn't be explained away or classified into non-existence. We need to move, Chen said, scanning the horizon. Someone knows we're here. They'd been careful, but in Afghanistan, careful only went so far. Sarah packed the evidence, and they started back toward their vehicle. The ambush came at the perfect spot, a narrow valley with high ground on both sides. Professional, coordinated, lethal. Not Taliban, but mercenaries. The Board protecting its interests. Sarah's team fought with the skill of veterans, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Cooper took a round in his good arm. Chen was pinned behind inadequate cover. They were going to die here, in the same dust that had claimed so many others, and then Sarah heard it, the distinctive sound of Apache helicopters. American Apaches coming in hot NN. The mercenaries scattered as 30mm cannon fire rained down. A voice crackled over Sarah's radio. "Thought you might need help, Captain." Kim, Thompson, and Davies, her rescued soldiers now returning the favor. They'd tracked her to Afghanistan, brought backup. "This is unauthorized," Sarah said, even as relief flooded through her. "So's leaving soldiers behind," Kim replied. "We learned from the best." The mercenaries retreated, leaving their dead. Sarah's team was battered but alive. And they had the evidence. Back in D.C., the revelations shook the military to its core. The Board members were arrested in coordinated raids. Decades of corruption unraveled in weeks. The media called it the biggest military scandal since Vietnam. But for Sarah, standing at Rodriguez's grave with her task force team, it was simpler. A soldier had died seeking justice. Other soldiers had finished her mission. That's what mattered. "Think we got them all?" Cooper asked, his arm in a sling but spirit intact. "No," Sarah said honestly, "but we got enough. And we'll keep looking. Keep fighting." "Still trying to save everyone, Captain?" Sarah touched Rodriguez's headstone gently. "No, just trying to ensure the ones we lost didn't die for nothing." The war against corruption would continue. New battles, new enemies, new sacrifices. But Sarah Mitchell had found her purpose again, not in retirement's false peace, but in the never-ending fight to protect those who served. Some soldiers carried rifles. Others carried truth. Both could be weapons in the right hands.